I was attacked with a bat on my way home from my part-time job, leaving me with a broken arm. Even though I was hospitalized due to overwork and fever, I couldn't get in touch with my husband, Stephen. I managed to call his workplace and pleaded. "Excuse me, I'm Stephen Davis's wife. Could you please put my husband on the phone?" The woman on the other end replied with a puzzled voice. "There's no one by that name here. There's no one by that name here." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. After talking further with the person on the phone, I learned that she was actually Stephen's real wife, Margaret. I had been deceived by Stephen all this time. "Hey Amy, who do you think is responsible for what happened to your arm?" "Who? I don't think the cause is just this person himself. I have an idea. Could you hold off on reporting him to the police and let me handle this for a bit?" I decided to trust Margaret's words. "My name is Amy Davis, 27 years old. I'm a part-time working wife, married for 5 years. My husband Stephen is 37. Exactly 10 years older than me and a very reliable person. Stephen works as a lawyer. That's why he's always so busy with work and often doesn't come home. I married Stephen right after graduating from college at 22. My parents were against my marriage to the man I had been dating since college. They said I was too young, that I should gain work experience first, that I might be getting tricked by a man 10 years my senior. Shocked by my parents' words, I ran off to be with Stephen. He readily agreed to let me stay with him. And so we got married, just like that. No ceremony. Believing we would have a proper one someday, we didn't even take photos. Since then, I've been working part-time and living in this room, waiting for Stephen. But Stephen really is busy. Hey, do you really have so many overnight jobs? I realized I had been constantly asking him the same question since we got married. That's right. Being a lawyer is really busy. You're young and naive, so you probably don't understand, but when clients are far away, there are a lot of overnight jobs. He often told me stories about how he had clients who relied on him from far away. I'm a simple person, so I just thought, oh, is that so? To begin with, I'm not the type to think deeply about things. That's probably why, when I fell in love with him, it was a straight shot. His job was something I had no connection to, so I could only listen in amazement. Recently, busy Stephen has had more days where he doesn't come home. It's probably because he is a capable lawyer, but for me, it's just unbearably lonely. I'm the type of person who wants to have someone I love by my side. That's why, during college, I was always with my friends and participated in various clubs and parties. I sometimes think back on how fun those days were. It's also significant that I was an only child at home and received a lot of love from my parents. Having married against my parents' opposition, I can't go crying to them now even if I'm lonely. So, to distract myself from that loneliness, if I heard that the part-time staff was short or overtime was needed, I would volunteer myself and try to minimize the time I spent alone. Hey, you can't come home again today? Sometimes, when I couldn't bear it, I would call Stephen and he would reply, "You understand, right? I'm working too. Don't be selfish." Unable to endure it, I would find myself sending him messages on social media saying I'm lonely. Please come home soon, I'll make a feast so just tell me when you'll be back. Then he would reply, "Stop doing that because it interferes with my work. Stop doing that because it interferes with my work." Is that how men are? Recently, his pace of coming home is once a week, no, maybe once every 2 weeks. I was very lonely. Now, I come home, finish the housework with my tired body, and then fall into a deep sleep. That's how my days go. What in the world happened to him? He couldn't have been that busy back when we were dating. I want him to be by my side more. But even if I'm thinking that alone, if Stephen refuses my calls and messages, I have no choice but to endure it. Unless something really urgent happens, then one day, as usual, I got home late due to overtime. The apartment we live in is about a 10-minute walk from the nearest station. It's in a residential area, but there are places where the streetlights are intermittent, which is a bit scary. The places where houses have been demolished and there are land for sale signs feel like the darkness is gaping open. A fear of not knowing what might suddenly appear wells up from within. That's why, whenever I approached that area, I would always break into a light jog. I'm even considering buying a bicycle. Because you never know what might suddenly happen. And on this day, that something did happen. When I checked the time as I left the station, it was already past 10 p.m. I was especially tired that day. My job is clerical work at a certain factory, but when it's busy, I also get sent to the warehouse. At those times, it often involves physical labor. Today, I received a report that the products we were supposed to have ordered were wrong, so I went to the warehouse to check the inventory, taking out and putting away many cardboard boxes, loading and unloading them. I also ran around to various places to contact the people out in the field. Thanks to that, my feet and body were completely exhausted. I found myself dragging my feet, which felt heavy. At that moment, I suddenly noticed. I felt a presence behind me. If I stopped, the other person would also stop, and if I started walking, they would also start moving again. After repeating this a few times, I realized that someone was following me. I have to run. But my feet are heavy and won't move well. I try to run, but my exhausted feet won't carry me forward properly. The person following me from behind must have noticed my movements, as they come running toward me. I gasp and turn around. A small figure is raising something toward me. I'm going to be hit. That's what I immediately thought, and I shielded my head with my left arm. A huge impact and pain shoot through my elbow. I see that a bat had strongly struck my arm. Losing my balance, I tumble to the ground, along with the bag I was carrying. The assailant tries to hit me again as I lay there. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? I can't bear to be hit many times with something like this. What my frantic hand touched was the smartphone that had flown out of my bag. I desperately pressed the camera shutter. The flash of light pierces the assailant's eyes. On the lock screen, the light or camera are the only things that respond immediately, but at that moment either one was fine. I just wanted an instant to dazzle the assailant's eyes, so I moved my finger desperately. That's when I realized it. The assailant was a woman. I muttered without thinking. As the assailant approached, a scent suddenly wafted over. Along with what seemed to be the person's own shampoo, there was also a familiar scent mixed in. The same scent as Stephen's. I found myself muttering. Then the assailant threw the bat they were holding and quickly ran away from the scene. The bat clattered as it rolled on the ground. I crouched there for a while, unable to move. Not only that, but my arm that had been hit by the assailant was in a lot of pain. Thinking this was bad, I fiddled with my smartphone as is and called the police in a trembling voice. As I waited, slumped down, a police car and ambulance arrived. The police must have assessed the situation and called for the paramedics too. The doctor who examined me at the hospital said with a troubled look, "Ah, this is a splendid fracture." "A fracture?" I asked in surprise. Was I hit that hard? Yes. Normally it would just be a crack, but you seem to be a little malnourished. Your bones look a bit weak. Make sure to get enough calcium and exposure to sunlight. As the pain gradually worsened, I received a painkiller injection. So will I be okay to go to work? I do clerical work. If we put a cast on to immobilize it, you should be fine. But you'll likely develop a fever, so how about you stay in the hospital tonight and tomorrow? Please. I decided to be hospitalized then and there. It was late and honestly, I was scared to go home alone now. The next morning, I explained the situation to my company and requested 3 days off. Oh my, something terrible happened to you. It can't be helped if you were hospitalized for something like that. Take care. My boss at the company was surprised, but when I explained what happened to me and about my body, he readily approved my sudden time off. But in the end, I must have accumulated a lot of fatigue normally, and the fever that developed once didn't go down easily, so I ended up being hospitalized for 4 days. When I managed to convey this over the phone, Stephen spat out irritably. "You were attacked and hit on your way home? I want to go there right away, but I'm in the middle of work right now. Somehow manage on your own." It seemed like he was going to hang up immediately, so I clung to the phone and asked, "Then when are you coming home? At least tell me that." "Don't be stupid, I don't know until it's resolved." Anyway, I can't take my hands off this right now. I'm hanging up. Don't send me pointless messages either." And before I could say anything else, the call was cut off. Lying on the hospital bed, Tormented by the gradually rising fever, I kept wondering why he was so busy. Then, when my fever started to go down, I decided to take the plunge and contact the law firm where Stephen works. The reason I could think to do such a thing was probably because my condition was different from usual. Even though the fever had gone down, I was still in a state of delirium, which allowed me to do it. But I didn't know the office phone number. So I searched for the name of the law firm in the state that I had heard about when we were dating and somehow found it. When I called, a woman's voice said, "Hello, Davis Law Firm. Hello, Davis Law Firm." "Excuse me, I'm the wife of Stephen Davis who works there. Please put my husband on the phone." I asked desperately, but the woman on the other end said in a puzzled voice, "There's no one like that here?" "What do you mean?" I continued asking in a trembling voice. "It's Stephen Davis. I'm his wife, Amy." Hearing that, the woman on the other end said in a slightly lowered voice, "Let's talk a bit later. I'm Margaret Davis. I'll call you back, so please give me your phone number." I found it a little strange that this person was also a Davis, but I honestly answered her calm voice. Then, 15 minutes later, the phone rang again. "Hello, you said your name is Amy Davis, right?" "Yes, I'm the wife of Stephen Davis." "Excuse me, but what name is on your insurance card?" Cutting off my words, Margaret abruptly asked, "The name on my insurance card?" "Yes." "Please tell me the name written on the paper insurance card you have." Feeling puzzled, I took out the insurance card I had submitted just the other day. "It's Amy Taylor." "Ah, I see." Margaret let out a big sigh. "Amy, listen carefully. As I said before, my name is Margaret Davis. I'm Stephen Davis's wife. His real wife." "What do you mean?" Forgetting what she had said before, I reflexively asked back. "Calm down, Amy. First, I want to know why you purposely called here. What in the world happened?" I'm sorry. Actually, the night before last, I was hit with a bat by a random attacker on my way home from work. My arm was broken." "A random attacker?" I heard her gasp on the other end. "And now I have a fever and I'm hospitalized. I'm sorry. Surely the person there and my husband just have the same name, right?" I'm sorry for saying it like that." "No, that's okay. More importantly, is your fracture okay?" "They said it'll be fine if it's immobilized for a while. But now, because of that, I have a fever and I'm also hospitalized due to overwork." This person named Margaret listened to my story without interrupting, making agreeing sounds in a calm voice. The fatigue caught up with you too. By the way, listen. The name on the insurance card you just told me, Amy Taylor, that's your real name now." "Huh?" I found myself asking back. I didn't understand what Margaret was saying. "Hey Amy, I want to talk with you at length after you're discharged from the hospital in a few days. Let's see, there are some things I want to look into, so let's meet again on a day off. You should see my personal number displayed there now, so if anything happens, please call me here." Saying that, Margaret hung up the phone. I had no idea what she had told me. Insurance card? What in the world did she mean? I had simply continued using this one since graduating college and getting married because Stephen said it was fine, that's all. And yet, what in the world? A week later, I met up with Margaret at the hospital, taking the opportunity of a checkup. I had unexpectedly been able to take time off. I had told my company that I was discharged, but my boss said with a slightly troubled look, "You always work diligently, so please think about your health sometimes. And I'm sorry for always making you work late even though you're part-time. It's because I made you go home so late that you ended up encountering a random attacker." Hearing those words, I felt distressed thinking I had made everyone worry. "No, it's my selfishness, letting me work so much. If it disrupts the work plans, I'm truly sorry." "You know, it's good that you're obedient, but you're a little reckless sometimes." "That's right. Amy is a good girl, but I get worried about you sometimes." Even my coworkers said such things for some reason. So I decided to take about 10 days off. This job is certainly clerical work, but it also involves a lot of using my arms. If I have to keep covering for that, my efficiency will also decrease. On top of that, I had accumulated quite a lot of paid leave. It wouldn't be bad to use some of it around now. When I contacted Margaret about this, she agreed to meet me at the hospital. We went from the hospital to a cafe to talk, in Margaret's car. Inside, the space was partitioned off for each table, so even if we talked a bit loudly, it wouldn't reverberate much to the surroundings. There, she got to the point. Let me reintroduce myself. I'm Stephen Davis's wife, and we've been married for 10 years now. And I'm a lawyer at the same firm as him. You called yourself Stephen's wife, but you're not actually married to him. After saying just that, Margaret placed a wedding photo stored in her smartphone and a copy of their family register in front of me. What I had unconsciously stopped thinking about after being told over the phone the other day was thrust in front of me again. Feeling like I might faint, Margaret said, "It's okay. Can you pull yourself together and listen?" She said with a serious expression. Yes. You know, I had been suspecting that he was cheating for a while. But he's in the same profession, so he wouldn't do anything to let me get evidence. I see. If I'm not married like Margaret says, then I'm the one he's cheating with. The weight of those words bore down on me as if it was a new realization. So him only coming back once every 1 or 2 weeks for work was actually him going back to his real home? Yes, Stephen certainly does have a lot of business trips, and he actually does go far away sometimes, and it's true that he's gone more often than not. Honestly, he only comes back home about that often too. But why in the world? I thought I had been married to him all this time. Margaret sighed. Amy, how old are you now? When you thought you got married, how many years ago was that? My age? I'm 27. I thought I got married 5 years ago, at 22, right after graduating college. You were young. And you said your current job is full-time part-time work, right? That must be tough. Wondering what she wanted to know, I nodded. Oh, as I told you over the phone the other day, I'm taking some paid leave now. Since it had accumulated. So now. No, that's not what's tough. It's that you were tricked by him and taken away while you had no real-world experience. You were deceived by his smooth words. I was surprised that she spoke ill of him. Hey, haven't you ever thought it's strange that your insurance card can be used? Could you show it to me if you have it now? As she said, I took out my insurance card from my wallet. Margaret took it and looked at it, then muttered, I thought so. You're still under your father's dependent coverage. But I was able to use it. Is there a problem? No, of course you can use it. It's not wrong. But the fact that you can use it means you're not married to him. In other words, your position is still ultimately your father's daughter, and from my perspective, you're my husband's mistress. My head spun at the reality thrust upon me that I wasn't married to Stephen. Then Margaret squeezed my hand as if to say it's okay. Strangely, I didn't feel any anger toward this person. No, that's not it. I just had no sense of reality. Poor thing, you were deceived by that man. But honestly, you were a blind spot for me. A blind spot? The one I suspected of being the mistress was this person. She showed me a photo of a certain woman. My eyes were drawn to the figure in that photo. This person. Do you know her? I reflexively let out an "Oh," and took out my smartphone. Then I opened the photo folder, and there it was. This. I showed one photo to her. This is the person who hit my arm with a bat. The photo showed a woman in a jersey holding a bat. It was the same person as the woman in the photo she had just shown me. Well done, Amy. Hey, did you show this to the police? No, I just noticed now. I'm really slow to notice these things. Margaret silently grimaced at my words. Then she lightly lowered her eyes and said, Wait a moment, and started pondering something for a while. Eventually, she opened her eyes and asked, Hey Amy, who do you think is responsible for what happened to your arm? She questioned me like that. Who? It's this person. But I don't think the real cause is this person. That's why I want you to wait a bit before telling the police about this person and let me handle it for a little while, okay? I silently nodded. I thought there was nothing I could do now, and I had no choice but to rely on this person. Then another week passed, and Stephen finally came home. Welcome back. That was quite a long business trip. I was lonely. I greeted Stephen and said this in a cheerful voice while hugging him. Then my arm cast happened to hit around his chest. Ah, so this is the fracture mentioned in the message. Are you okay now? I wasn't okay. How many times do you think I wanted to contact you? I tried to send messages a few times, but I did as you said. You know, actually, I was hit with a bat. Saying that, I smoothly separated from Stephen. But I'm okay now. I properly went to the hospital and got examined. An ambulance came for me that time. I purposely didn't mention the police. By the way, actually, my friend is here today. A friend? That's unusual. From work? No, it's a friend I made recently. Hey, could you come over here for a bit? I want to introduce you. I took his hand with a smile and led him toward the living room. When I opened the door, the two women who were sitting on the sofa watching TV turned around to face us. You too, he is back. Hey, welcome back, Stephen. So you come back here too, huh? Margaret? And Jasmine. Why are you two together? One was Margaret, and the other was Jasmine, the other mistress who had attacked me that time. Come on, sit down, sit down. And I pushed the frozen Stephen toward the two of them with my working hand. The two of them forced the shocked and powerless Stephen into a seat from both sides. Why the hell are you here? Why? Because we became friends, you know? At Jasmine's words, the three of us simultaneously said, Yeah. Hey Stephen, you always said you were suffering because your wife looked down on you at the office and at home, and you wanted to punch her, so I went to teach her a lesson. But what, this Amy isn't even your wife? I ended up breaking her arm by mistake. It's your fault, you know? Huh, what the hell? Jasmine, you broke Amy's arm? So I thought I'd go to your wife's place, but when I followed you home and attacked the woman living there on the street at night, it was a huge mistake. I was just surrounding you, that's all, right? That's right. Jasmine was the one who had attacked me. Margaret had originally visited this person, whom she had investigated, directly and explained what had happened, asking for her cooperation. In exchange, she would defend her in the assault case against me this time. I never asked for that. Jasmine, did you really do it? Hitting Amy with a bat. Didn't ask? Didn't you think I'd do something like that? But you know, right now, I want to punch you. Jasmine grinned nastily and slammed her right fist into her left palm several times. Huh, why me? Are you stupid? No matter how much of a bitch I am, do you seriously think I'd cling to a guy who's dating 3 women at the same time? Just thinking that I was stuck on a man like this makes me feel like I'm really stupid and puts me in a bad mood, she bluntly said. And I thought, I was really stupid too. I was just surrounded by this person, but I believed his words that we were married and assumed I had become his wife. Come to think of it, I only signed the marriage license. I left the submission to him. Why didn't Stephen try to go submit it together? It's obvious. There's no way he could submit it, so of course he wouldn't go together. I must have wanted to keep dreaming of being married to him without facing reality. That's why I couldn't think it was strange about the insurance card, which I should have noticed if I had looked into it a little. So, I don't care about your excuses, Margaret said to Stephen, who was trembling as he faced Jasmine, who looked like she might raise her hand at any moment. With Amy being found, all the evidence of your cheating has been gathered. I told my father everything, you know, to your father-in-law. Stephen's face changed color. That person must be important for his position. Yes, I gathered the evidence and submitted it to my father, who had no eye for people and made me marry you based on your potential. And he had the rights to the firm transferred to me. So as the new director, my first decision is this. Stephen, you will leave the firm. And I will submit what you did to the Bar Association. What? Well, of course. That's my father's firm. You entered it as my husband and worked as the next director, but if we kept employing someone who would do something so legally questionable, it would be a credibility problem for our firm. There's no way my father would let me stay with someone like this. So, you'll write this too. Margaret put divorce papers on the table and thrust them at him. Seeing that, words suddenly came out of my mouth too. Stephen, you didn't even give me a divorce petition, let alone the marriage license from that time. He raised his face at that. Grease sweat was flowing profusely from his forehead. No, but you didn't ask anything. So you deceive young women all over the place? Hey Margaret, this guy works with the law, right? Yes, that's right. It's really shameful as a fellow professional. Seeing him flustered like this in front of the two of them, I really started to feel pathetic. Not just him, but myself too. To think that I was just waiting patiently for this kind of person every day while worrying about various things. When that thought suddenly crossed my mind, Jasmine's voice reached my ears. Hey Margaret, can I sock this guy one? What should we do? If you hit or hurt anyone else, the charges will increase, you know? It's fine. Then Margaret will defend me with all her might, right? Then Margaret smiled and said, yes, that might be okay. Saying that casually, she nonchalantly moved away from the two of them. All right. Stop, please stop it. What, did you think I was going to punch you? Jasmine promptly took something out of the bag she had brought. A red and yellow two-tone canned food. Moreover, it seemed to be slightly swollen. Then, Margaret quietly came over to me and whispered, listen, Amy, when Jasmine throws that at Stephen, get out of the house immediately. Huh? While such a conversation was exchanged between us, Jasmine turned to Stephen and said, thanks for everything. This is my gratitude for until now. She threw the swollen canned food with all her might. With a thud, the canned food hit Stephen and fell. Let's go. Margaret gave the command. We quickly opened the living room door and headed straight for the front door. And just as we were about to close the door after leaving the room, wah! We heard a loud scream from inside. Close the door right away! Margaret urged in a hurry. What in the world did Jasmine throw at Stephen? Ha 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 ha. Yeah, it worked. The $65 I spent was worth it. Huh, $65? For that canned food? Then Margaret also let out a loud laugh, ha ha ha. Well, that's about how much it costs. Because that canned food is surströmming. As I tilted my head in confusion, Jasmine added, it's said to be the world's smelliest canned food. If you leave it at room temperature, it ferments and explodes when it swells up that much. Man, I always wanted to try it. I never thought I'd end up throwing it at that guy, though. And you even waited a bit at room temperature so it would properly explode, right? Margaret asked amidst her uncontrollable laughter. That's why I told Amy to send her luggage to her parents' place or somewhere beforehand. This room will probably be contaminated and unusable for about a month. Contaminated? The moment I heard that word, laughter welled up from the depths of my stomach for some reason. The image of Stephen, who had been pretending to be so cool until now, kept appearing and disappearing in my mind. Well, Margaret, I'm going to turn myself in to the police, so come with me. Right, there's also the matter of whether to press charges, so Amy, you come too. Wait a second. I told the two of them to step away from the door a little. What are you going to do? Taking a deep breath, I suddenly opened the door and shouted, Stinky, stinky, stinky. I can't stay in a room like this anymore, so I'm never coming back. You've been deceiving me all this time. I really hate you now. After saying all that in one go, I slammed the door shut. Blinking at the stimulating odor that leaked out and coughing, I laughed with all my might along with my tears for the first time in a long while. Immediately after that, the three of us headed to the police. However, I had decided to settle out of court. After all, Jasmine was also just another victim who ended up doing what she did because of Stephen. And I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of affinity toward Jasmine's actions throughout this whole thing. Toward the person who hit me with a bat? People might say I'm too much of a softie, but it's true that I'm ignorant. And I'm probably too much of a goody two-shoes and an idiot who doesn't know the ways of the world. But right now, the feeling of being fellow victims deceived by the same man is very strong for me. And also, Jasmine's method of revenge against Stephen was just too funny. Moreover, after hearing the story from Margaret, Jasmine immediately came to apologize to me and said she would properly pay for my medical expenses. She also said she wouldn't charge anything to Jasmine and me. As for me, there was also the fact that it was confirmed I had truly been told by him that we were married, didn't know about the existence of his household, and was completely deceived. In other words, he liked young girls, Margaret said after everything was sorted out. Actually, you were dating him since you were a student too, right? Did Stephen perhaps offer you money? No, that's not it. I genuinely thought it was true love. I really loved him. He must have taken advantage of that. And she sighed again. But still, the fact that I had such a man as my husband was terrible in itself. By the way, Stephen exploded the canned food inside that room, and the terrible smell permeated it to a frightening degree, making him unable to appear in public for a while. Of course, the room he had me staying in also became unusable because of the canned food. Apparently, even if you were to do house cleaning, it would require a special level of cleaning. And I heard from Margaret later that it cost quite a lot. On top of that, along with the divorce petition, he was also charged a large amount of compensation for his infidelity. There's also the matter of the bar association that Margaret mentioned when she said she would fire him from the firm. As a result of reporting Stephen's actions to the bar association, he was removed from the association's registry. I don't know the details, but apparently, lawyers can't work unless they're registered with the bar association. Now, how will Stephen pay for all these massive expenses? Well, that's none of my business. Even so, for someone who studied extremely hard to obtain a qualification that seems impossibly difficult to me, to lose the ability to use it because of something like this, could it be that Stephen was even more of an idiot than me? In any case, the price he has to pay for what he did to us 3 women is high. I hope he will thoroughly reflect on his actions. After that, I returned to my parents' home and am currently preparing to start job hunting again once my arm heals. I quit the part-time job I had been working at for 5 years because I decided to move back in with my parents after this incident. When I went to my parents' place to send my belongings, Margaret came with me and put in a good word for me to my parents. She also introduced me to several law firms near my parents' home for my job search. So now I'm preparing for that job hunt. By the way, it seems my parents had a vague idea of where I was and what kind of life I was living. That's because the fact that I was using my insurance card under my father's dependent coverage means that the medical statements were being sent to my parents' home. So my parents automatically received notifications about where and how many times I went to the doctor. Looking at that, my parents were relieved that I wasn't suffering from any particularly serious illnesses or injuries and that I hadn't gotten pregnant. In other words, my parents were patiently waiting for me to wake up on my own. I was really an idiot. By the way, Margaret, Jasmine, and I have become close enough to create a group on social media and exchange messages. And we're also talking about having a meal together once I find a new job. At that time, we plan to laugh about Stephen's current state as well. I wasted 5 years of my 20s, but from now on, I want to reflect on my own naivety and become able to manage on my own. My ex-girlfriend's in trouble. I have to go pick her up. My husband said this as he gazed at a woman as if he was drawn to her. I was astonished and dumbfounded by his sudden outburst. It happened on our wedding day, as we were driving to the venue. He slammed on the brakes and stopped, seeming to watch the situation for a while. The woman my husband was looking at was carrying a heavy load of luggage, struggling with it. And then, suddenly flustered, he said to me, "You're in the way. Get out, now." My name is Harper. I'm a 29-year-old nurse. I met my husband Kevin, who is the same age as me, through a friend's introduction. I'm so busy with work, I hardly have time for dating. But if I meet the right person, I'd like to get married. I had said this absurd request to a friend, who then told me, "I know someone perfect for you. I'll bring them over sometime." And she went out of her way to arrange a meeting just for me. At that time, I was working hard as a nurse. I thought I would like a man who could take the lead, someone manly. Kevin was exactly the kind of man I had in mind. He took pride in his work and seemed serious, tackling everything with confidence, which I admired. I hadn't talked much with men outside of work. So I was nervous, but Kevin said, "Being a nurse must be really tough. Especially now, I'd imagine healthcare workers are under a lot of mental and physical stress." And showed concern. Those words were very comforting to me. I said, "Yes. It's tough, but seeing you, Kevin, makes me think I need to strive harder." And he seemed embarrassed. I was drawn not just to his serious side, but also to how he had a cheerful side as well. Our relationship smoothly progressed to marriage. I felt that with him, I could continue my life without changing much, supporting each other. I loved my job, so it was natural for me to continue working after marriage. However, one day, my husband approached me with an angry look, saying, "There's something I want to talk about." I wondered if I had done something to upset him, when he suddenly said, "I want you to quit your job." I was shocked, but tried to remain calm. "Why?" "I love my job, so I don't want to quit." "Did I do something to upset you?" Then, "How do you think it looks when my wife works harder than me? From now on, you quit your job and focus all your energy on housework, and I'll support you, okay?" He commanded in a tone of authority. It was the first time I saw this side of him, and it felt strange. I told him, "If you wanted a housewife, you should have said so before we got married. Then we could have discussed it." He responded quietly, "I've never seen someone so dedicated to their work and striving for perfection. I thought it would be helpful if you became a housewife after we married, since I'm not good at household chores." I got mad and said, "Then why not hire a housekeeper? Or is it that you're fine with anyone who can do perfect housework for no cost?" He replied, "Don't be ridiculous. Of course not. I wouldn't live together if I didn't enjoy being with you." I was very conflicted but decided to try harder since we were newlyweds and I still had feelings for my husband. After some thought, I said, "If that's the reason, I'll try a bit harder with the housework. I don't plan to quit my job. At least wait until you can cover the living expenses for 2 adults on your own before saying such things." And continued to work. Perhaps because he got really upset, he didn't just refrain from doing household chores, he started monitoring everything I did. Naturally, my workload only increased. Being employed, there were days I had to cut corners on housework. Then, as if he had been waiting, he would say I did this wrong or didn't do that, almost triumphantly. Fed up, I told him, "I get that you're not good at housework. It doesn't have to be perfect. But since we're both working, I'd appreciate some help." He sighed in exasperation. "That's why I've been saying I don't want to do housework, because I'm not good at it. Balancing work and housework is tough, so you should just quit your job." And was unwilling to listen. I couldn't stand it anymore, saying, "When will you understand that we can't make ends meet without both incomes? If we lose my salary, we'll barely cover the rent and fixed expenses." But he didn't care. My husband changes the topic quickly whenever it comes to his earnings. He said, "Abigail did things more perfectly, you know. It's surprising how there can be such a difference between women. No matter how good you are at your job, failing at housework, which is a woman's job, means you're failing as a woman. Be thankful to me for marrying you despite your imperfect housework skills." Abigail was the girlfriend my husband had before me. Being compared to an ex-girlfriend after getting married made me angry, but part of me thought there was some truth to his words. Even if I'm somewhat respected at work, as a woman, I lacked appeal. Not just because I was married, but I was aware of my lack of femininity. I knew this about myself, but hearing it from my husband made me even more determined to prove him wrong. However, the reality is we couldn't live on my husband's earnings alone. So, I continued working while becoming more efficient at housework. My husband always looked for chores I hadn't done, but eventually, he had nothing to say because I did everything perfectly. Only then did peace return to our home. One day, we had a dinner planned with both our parents. My mom asked about the wedding, and I spoke enthusiastically about my dreams. I've been saving up because I always wanted to have a ceremony. I want it to be a glamorous event that everyone enjoys. My suggestion received claps of agreement from my mom and my mother-in-law, Avis, but my husband said, "Do we really need to go all out? Plus, the guests don't care about what we like. They think it's a hassle, worried about the gift money, but go anyway to avoid being called uncaring or bad at maintaining relationships. They just go because they have to. No one is moved by seeing someone else's happiness anyway. Aren't you watching too much drama?" Laughing, he completely dismissed my idea. I had never once thought like my husband at any wedding I attended, so I was angry, thinking such people shouldn't bother attending. My husband went further, saying, "Besides, if you have that much saved up, I'd like a piece of it as a reward for sweating it out all day at work. Yeah, I want a motorcycle. Let's save on the wedding and honeymoon and buy my bike instead." And that's what he did, moving forward with the plan to save as much money as possible to buy his bike. Glancing at my parents, I saw their faces tense. It looked like they were holding back what they wanted to say. That's when the in-laws spoke up. "Kevin, enough is enough. Dismissing your wife's wishes and only thinking about yourself. How can you think of using the money Harper saved for the wedding on a motorcycle just for you?" They were angry. My father-in-law, Lanny, added, "People have different views on weddings, so it's natural for you and Harper to have a difference in opinion. But to outright deny her and then insult her, only wanting the money. Do you realize how ugly that makes you? If you continue like this, you'll be divorced before you even get married." And scolded him. I told my husband, "I've never once been to a wedding where I didn't feel moved or enjoy myself. When I see a happy bride, I naturally tear up, thinking how the groom must cherish his wife, thanking them for the ceremony. Some friends even planned events to ensure the guests enjoyed themselves, and it was truly fun. But you think differently, and that's okay. How about we save on the wedding and spend more on the honeymoon instead?" The in-laws scolding him made me happy, but no matter how much they reprimand him, it means nothing if he's not willing to change. I was ready to compromise and have the wedding his way when he said, "No, it's fine. I'll grant all your wishes. If you liked the weddings you've been to so much, why don't we make it even better than those?" He suddenly became serious. My husband doesn't like being compared to others. And being told by his parents that we might end up divorced seemed to have made him reflect. Our parents looked relieved and advised, "It'll be busy, but try to talk as much as possible. It's wrong to force only one's opinion, but it's also wrong to stay silent. Make sure to express your feelings to each other." Seeing the way her son was behaving, Avis seemed to imply that she knew he would come around. "Way to go, Kevin. I knew if we just talked to you, you'd understand. Look, Harper, how about this cute dress? It suits you so well," she suggested with a smile while flipping through a magazine. "Harper, please don't hesitate to say anything. If money is an issue, we can figure something out," she even offered. Feeling it was too much, I mentioned we would manage within our means, but I was touched by how much the in-laws were looking forward to the wedding. My in-laws had always treated me like their own daughter since we started dating. "If Kevin ever does anything terrible to you, let us know right away. they continued to say. From there, we were able to smoothly proceed with the wedding preparations. My husband became enthusiastic, saying, "We're going to make this a ceremony no one has ever done before." He began researching in books and online, becoming more proactive in making suggestions than I was. Looking at other people's weddings, Kevin said, "This is nice." Seeing him smile naturally made me feel the beauty of weddings was getting through to him, and I felt reassured. We both like to delve into things until we are satisfied. Meetings with the wedding planner often made the day fly by. Despite being busy, discussions with my husband were peaceful, and those days felt enjoyable. Finally, the day of the wedding arrived. It was a scorching summer day, but the weather was clear, so I felt relieved we could have the ceremony without any issues. My husband was eager too, and we got up early, fully prepared and left. He was driving us to the venue. We would arrive with time to spare if we drove as usual. That's what I was thinking, looking forward to it, when he suddenly hit the brakes. I asked, "What? What happened?" Startled. There was no apparent danger, and I couldn't understand why he had stopped so abruptly. Then he said, "I'll pull over for a bit." And he pulled the car over. Suddenly, he said, "Yeah, I thought so. Abigail is there," and stared at a woman walking on the sidewalk for a while. I was shocked and dumbfounded by his sudden outburst. It seemed Abigail was struggling with heavy luggage, occasionally stopping to rest. From my husband's reaction, I wondered if he was considering helping her because she seemed to be having a hard time. Though I felt complex emotions watching him stare, I was relieved when he started driving again. Honestly, I felt he might still have feelings for his ex-girlfriend since he always compared me to her. My husband compares everything I do to his ex-girlfriend and complains that I'm not good enough. I was worried such a thing wouldn't happen on our wedding day, but it turned out to be an unfounded fear. However, once we lost sight of Abigail after several failed attempts to see her, he pulled the car over again, looked at me, and smiled. "You're in the way, so get out of the car." I was so shocked, I went blank. "What? Why? She didn't even ask you to give her a ride, and you're going to go talk to her? You know it's our wedding day today, don't you?" I asked, but he said, "It's too much for her to carry all that luggage. Just listen to me," and forcefully dragged me out of the car. "You'd better not follow me," he said, and drove off alone. After that, I was too stunned to think and just stood there. I couldn't catch up to the car even if I returned now, and I couldn't call him because my wallet and phone was in the car. I was gradually getting so angry that I didn't feel like having a wedding, but I thought that I would cause trouble if I didn't contact the venue, so I walked towards the venue alone. Even if Kevin didn't show up, I thought I could explain that my valuables were left in the car and the in-laws would help bring them back. Thinking about what to do next, I arrived sooner than expected. Having left home early and the distance not being too much, I managed to arrive on time for our appointment with the venue. However, it was honestly exhausting because I kept walking under the scorching sun without a parasol. As I entered the building and was about to rest, there was my husband, looking utterly dejected. It was understandable that he arrived before me since he was in a car, but why was he here if he went to see Abigail? As I pondered this, Avis seemed to notice me and rushed over in a panic. "Harper, I'm really sorry for our foolish son. It was hot, wasn't it? Are you okay? Here, drink this," and offered me water. After gratefully accepting the water, I asked my husband, "What happened to Abigail?" Then he bluntly explained, "She said she didn't need help and ran off. Plus, some guy I don't know shielded Abigail and took her away." So, I had no choice but to come here. He seemed distant. As I looked on bewildered, the in-laws scolded my husband. As we said before, it's unbelievable that you would leave your wife on your wedding day to approach an ex-girlfriend. We don't expect you to be forgiven, but you need to apologize sincerely. Leaving him utterly disheartened, Avis sadly shared. Actually, we were too excited and arrived way before the two of you. When Kevin arrived alone, we pressed him about where you were and then understood the situation after hearing the story. I then asked my husband, "Why didn't you come back for me after Abigail declined?" She got really mad at me. Called me a monster. I just lost all motivation to do anything. I figured if I came here, you'd show up eventually, so I thought I'd just wait for you. He responded. Looking closer, I noticed his cheek was swollen and red, later learning that Lanny couldn't hold back and had hit him. As we struggled to shift our mood towards the wedding, Abigail arrived. By her side was an unfamiliar man, introduced as her husband. Abigail's husband glared at Kevin. Trying to forcefully get a resisting woman into your car, then running away at the sight of someone's face. I heard from Abigail. Weren't you the one who kept pestering her after you broke up? And it's your wedding day today? Leaving your own wife to hit on your ex is the lowest of the low, he said, visibly angry. Abigail then looked at my husband with disdain before turning to me. We did date, it's true. But we broke up, and I have no interest in him anymore. I never imagined he would leave his wife on his wedding day to approach me. I'm really sorry. I hurried to stop her apology. Don't be. The one at fault here is him. Don't apologize. Relieved by my words, Abigail let out a sigh. My husband, losing his target for anger, glared at me, tears spilling from his eyes. If you had just stopped me, this wouldn't have happened. You should have stopped me. Don't you feel any pain seeing me blamed like this? Disgusted, I was about to retort that he should take responsibility when Abigail and her husband began berating him. Abigail firmly stated, Enough is enough. I kept quiet because the nuisance was only towards me, but now you've bothered not just your wife but also my dear husband. I won't let this go easily. Her husband also scorned. Who do you think you are? Hurting both your wife and another man's wife and then playing the victim? I then asked Abigail. You and your husband did nothing wrong. Instead, we're deeply sorry for the trouble caused by him. Based on his words, he was actually trying to reconcile with you, wasn't he? She sighed deeply. Actually, our home and Kevin's family home are quite close. He's ambushed me pretending it was coincidence multiple times, demanding reconciliation. I've always rejected him clearly but quietly, fearing his quick temper. I kept it from my husband, but I regret not telling him sooner. Before nodding, her husband added, I understand why my wife couldn't tell me before. Seeing how unreasonable he is, arguing wouldn't have made a difference. I don't blame her. I felt they were a wonderfully considerate couple, and even thought they were strangers. I was glad that Abigail found such a good person to marry. I desperately apologized to Abigail. It's okay. If anything, we're the ones who should be sorry. Even when you said you were busy with work, he was imposing on you. I'm truly, deeply sorry. Then, to Kevin, who still looked unconvinced, I yelled, You should apologize too. Your actions have caused trouble for many people. What are you going to do about it? But he only frowned. It was Abigail's husband who got angry at such a demeanor. No need for apologies. With that look on your face, I can't expect any sincere remorse from you. Anyway, I want nothing to do with you. Promise never to go after another man's wife again. As he yelled, Kevin stepped forward in front of Abigail's husband, his face turning red. Abigail was with me before she met you. So, I understand her better than you do, right? I want to get back together. If you're lonely being single, I'm open to swapping wives. Let's do that. She's hardworking and has money. Kevin spoke as if it were a brilliant idea, uttering nonsense. Not only I, but also Abigail and her husband were left speechless by the absurdity of it all. Seeing him talk happily about the day we'd divorce and that he'd marry Abigail made up my mind. Anyway, let's cancel the wedding. I told my husband and apologized to the in-laws. I'm sorry. I know you were looking forward to today, but as you can see, I cannot marry him. I'm sorry for turning out this way after all your kindness. Then the in-laws tearfully apologized, saying, You've done nothing wrong, and we think you're making the right decision. It's our own child, but we think he's truly foolish. We're sorry for all the trouble. Looking around calmly, I saw many venue staff members watching us. Checking the time, relatives and friends were soon to arrive. Feeling guilty about sending a cancellation notice now, I spoke with the staff to change the wedding to a dinner party, deciding not to accept any gifts. The venue staff, accustomed to handling crises, arranged the dinner party efficiently, though they cast blameful looks at my husband, for which I was grateful. My husband, unconcerned about the attendees, kept cheerfully talking about his new life with Abigail while I was talking to the staff. Seeing him able to talk such nonsense in front of Abigail and her husband, who looked at him with disgust, was appalling. After the explanation, I went back to my husband and told him I agreed to the divorce. As expected, he was not even slightly sad but instead delighted to accept. Right then, guests started arriving. My parents, in-laws, and I kept apologizing to everyone, asking them to at least enjoy the meal, making an awkward excuse. I never intended to share such a ridiculous story with the guests, but my husband happily announced the wedding cancellation and our divorce. The people who arrived on the dot were confused by the sudden cancellation. Moreover, when questioned by the guests, my husband calmly continued his delusions about finding true love and marrying the person he truly loved. Abigail! This is beyond not making sense anymore. Please, run away with your husband now. I quietly pulled Abigail aside and handed her over to a staff member, and they quickly left through the back door. Just when I thought things would calm down, my husband, noticing Abigail's absence, flew into a rage. Seeing them walking outside the window, he started chasing after them in a panic. Abigail, wait. Come home with me, not with that guy. Enough. What's wrong with you? Stay away from Abigail and get lost. My husband was easily stopped by Abigail's husband as he dashed out of the venue. Then my dad and Lanny caught up and restrained him, dragging him back inside the venue. I followed, apologizing to Abigail and her husband repeatedly as I saw them off. The attendees, having witnessed the whole sequence, were thoroughly dismayed, leaving the venue telling my husband he was the worst. While feeling sorry, there was a part of me that felt it couldn't be helped since my husband's rampage was unstoppable. In the end, only my friends, my parents, and the in-laws remained, showing concern for me and helping me regain some peace. After the cleanup was done in the heavy atmosphere, my husband again said, "Now that the cleanup is done, it's all good, right? Then I'm going back to Abigail's house." Saying that, he tried to leave the venue, so the in-laws, in tears, forcibly put him in a car and took him home. A few days later, with the in-laws present, I had my husband sign the divorce papers, and we officially divorced. His belongings at home were either carried out by the in-laws or sent via mail. It was a hectic time, but it finally ended. One day, I went to a town in the suburbs to refresh and coincidentally met Abigail and her husband at a shopping mall. I was worried about how they were doing after everything, so when I asked, they shared their updates. Apparently, my ex-husband hadn't learned his lesson and had been lurking around the places he met Abigail, and even stalking her at home and work. My ex-husband had been saying, "We're still in a relationship, right? You were just playing hard to get, weren't you?" And continued to demand a reconciliation, cherry-picking facts to suit him. Finally, Abigail consulted with the police and initiated a lawsuit against him. Thinking he did nothing wrong, my ex-husband spouted delusions even in front of the police and was deemed a dangerous person. Immediate action was taken, and he was issued a restraining order against approaching Abigail. Surprisingly, he lost his momentum as soon as the restraining order was issued. It was only after facing legal action that he realized Abigail truly detested him. Since then, he has stayed away from Abigail's surroundings. It doesn't matter much to me, but if this means he won't bother Abigail and her husband anymore, I'm relieved. Abigail continued. Actually, we're moving close to my husband's parents' home soon. We came today to buy cleaning supplies for the move. Harper, please take care of yourself too. As I apologized and saw them off, they left with smiles. Watching their backs, I silently wished them happiness. This resolved the issue. The moment I thought to delete my ex-husband's contact, he called me. I had kept his contact for property distribution matters, but never expected him to call. I truly didn't want to answer. But I had just met Abigail and her husband. So I answered, slightly anxious. Can we just forget about the divorce? Living alone made me realize how important you are to me. Let's try living together again, cooperatively. He began to say. After pondering his words for a good dozen seconds, I calmly replied, "You must be joking. We're strangers now. No matter what you say, I have no intention of remarrying you. Please, don't contact me ever again." Then I hung up, setting his number to auto-reject after he kept calling back. He continued to make a fuss on the other end of the phone, but now I was completely free of him. He tried calling from different numbers for a while, but as I continued to ignore them and changed my phone and number, I finally found peace. Since the house was sold, there was no issue even if he showed up unannounced, and there was no way for him to contact me. Abigail and her husband had already moved, and if he showed up at my parents' home, they would be furious and chase him away. The in-laws, having given up on my ex-husband after this incident, decided to sell the house. This house is close to Abigail's parents' house, so we decided to sell it now. Seeing Avis and Lanny tear up was hard, but I wished for them to live happily, far from my ex-husband. Without a home to return to, Kevin must be wandering alone now. Without knowing each other's whereabouts, and having caused a scene at the wedding, he was isolated by rumors among friends and at work. A friend who worked at the same company said his ostracization at work was severe. Truly a case of reaping what one sows. I hope he genuinely reflects on his actions. As for me, I started a new life from scratch in a new place. I had an opportunity and transferred to a new hospital. My current workplace allows for a balanced work life, enabling me to juggle household chores and work. I'm happy to engage in fulfilling work in a new environment, where I'm also building good relationships. Although divorced, I'm far happier than when I was living with my ex-husband. I've rediscovered my love for my job. I hope for continued peaceful days. Something feels off. I try to pinch my cheeks to ward off the sudden wave of sleepiness, but it's utterly ineffective. There wasn't anything particularly exhausting about today, just a meal at my in-laws. And I'm not usually short on sleep. Why then, I wonder drowsily, when I hear my husband's laughter. Good night, LOL. I'll make sure you have sweet dreams. My name is Lila. A 24-year-old office worker, newly married to Riley, who is 5 years my senior. We met through a friend and, after dating for 2 years, were happily married. We had a grand wedding recently and received blessings from many people. Just as I was dreaming about our happy married life ahead, an unexpected misfortune struck. Emerson, my mother-in-law, suddenly fell ill and passed away in no time. Emerson was cheerful and very kind, delighted when I first went to greet her. Nice to meet you, I'm Lila. Oh, what a joy to have such a lovely woman as my son's wife. I've always dreamed of having tea time with my son's wife. I'd be delighted. Please, let's have tea time together. Though I was nervous, Emerson welcomed me with a full smile, making me feel at ease and fond of her. We had planned to have tea time together after the wedding settled down, but that dream was shattered with Emerson's passing. We were busy with Emerson's funeral, sorting out her belongings, and handling the inheritance, finally settling down a year later. Then, I got a call from Trevor, my father-in-law. Layla, how about a meal at our house next weekend night? I'm thinking of ordering takeout. Yes, of course. Thank you. So, I was invited to dine with Trevor next weekend night, along with Riley. Trevor ordered Singaporean cuisine, which he loves, and we enjoyed the feast. The three of us gathered around the dining table. It was my first time trying Singaporean cuisine, and everything was delicious. Except, the soup tasted oddly. Curious, I asked my husband. Hey Riley, doesn't this soup taste a bit strange? That's just how this dish is. You're not used to Singaporean cuisine, haha. Though Riley laughed it off, I couldn't stomach the soup, so I avoided it and ate the other dishes. Then, I felt Trevor's sharp gaze. Lila, I went through the trouble of ordering this, so make sure you drink the soup. Startled by Trevor's outburst, I hurriedly gulped down the soup. It still tasted weird. The strange taste spread throughout my mouth, and I tried to cleanse my palate with water and other dishes. Gradually, my vision blurred, and I found myself slumping over the table. What's happening? I'm incredibly sleepy. This isn't good, I'll really fall asleep. I need to stay awake. As my consciousness faded, I could hear Riley's laughter. It seems to have worked. Dad, is that thing ready? Of course, it's all set. It's in the dresser drawer in the bedroom. The new ones are amazing, only 0.01 millimeters thick. We didn't have those when I was young. Realizing Riley and Trevor were discussing contraceptives, I felt a sense of danger but then lost consciousness completely. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. What happened? I murmured groggily. Oh, thank goodness. You're awake. Looking towards the voice, there was our neighbor, Luella. Luella immediately called the doctor, who explained that I had been given a large dose of sleeping pills. Sleeping pills! So that's why the soup tasted so odd. Then, I learned from Luella. Your dad and husband ran off in the car, so I accompanied you in the ambulance. I'm so glad you woke up safely. Really? Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the trouble. But, what do you mean Dad and my husband fled in a car? Actually, Luella found out that the fire alarm was ringing at my in-laws' house and it wouldn't stop, so she decided to check on them. When she rang the doorbell, Trevor came out. Yes. What's going on, ringing the fire alarm like this? It's been going off for so long. Haven't you found the source yet? This is serious. I'm coming in. Please, it's okay. Don't come into the house. What are you talking about? We're supposed to help each other out in times of need. Luella said that, barging into the house, and found me lying listlessly in the living room. Oh my! You've collapsed from inhaling smoke. This is terrible. I need to call an ambulance right away. No, this is different. Trevor and my husband tried to deny it hastily, but Luella was convinced I had collapsed from smoke inhalation and called for emergency and fire services on the spot. Lila is just sleeping. That's right. My wife is just tired and sleeping. There's nothing to worry about. Despite their desperate explanations, Luella objected. It's strange that she won't wake up with such a loud noise going on. I'm worried. I wonder if the ambulance will arrive soon. Luella was frantic. Before we knew it, people had started gathering. Riley and Trevor began to sweat profusely. Soon after, Riley and Trevor hurriedly jumped into a car and fled, leaving me behind. That's why Luella ended up accompanying me in the ambulance. Such a thing. Thank you so much. I expressed my gratitude to Luella. Then, when I told the doctor about the conversation I heard between Riley and Trevor before losing consciousness, he grimaced and made a call, and I was informed that Riley and Trevor were also admitted to the same hospital. Riley and Dad are hospitalized. Why? Apparently, after fleeing the house in the car, Riley and Trevor were driving frantically to get as far away as possible. As a result, the car Riley was driving crashed into the wall of a mansion, causing an accident. Both were brought to this hospital by ambulance, severely injured with broken bones, but their lives were not in danger. Hearing the reason for their admission, I was overwhelmed with anger, disgust, and various other emotions. They got what they deserved. I'll never forgive them. I decided to hire a lawyer and sue over this incident. Then, sleeping pills were detected in the soup bowl I had finished, and Riley and Trevor were arrested for assault. The news even reported on the incident. Later, during the police investigation, they were rearrested for attempted rape. Trevor was stressed from being busy with Emerson's funeral and other matters, becoming frustrated. He was planning to visit a nightclub, but when Riley found out, he made a proposition to Trevor. Dad, if you're that frustrated, I can lend you Lila. But in return, give me Mom's kimonos. Really? I'd be thrilled to be with young Lila, but... Why Mom's kimonos? Are you running out of money? Yeah, I kinda blew through my savings. Riley had squandered his savings on gambling and offered me in exchange for Emerson's kimonos, which came from a distinguished family and were valuable. Riley knew this and proposed the trade to Trevor. Lila doesn't know I'm hooked on gambling. I've used quite a bit from our joint savings account, so I want to cover it up before she finds out. I see. But I can't imagine Lila agreeing to be with me. That's okay. I have a good idea. You still have some of Mom's sleeping pills, right? Emerson had been prescribed sleeping pills for her insomnia before she passed away. With those sleeping pills remaining, Riley and Trevor concocted their plan. They decided to dissolve powdered sleeping pills in the soup and proceed after I had fallen asleep. Perfect plan, right? This way I get money, and Dad's frustration is relieved. It's all good. Right. Let's invite Lila over for a dinner party next weekend. However, their scheme was abruptly foiled by the ringing of the fire alarm, leading to the foolish outcome of causing an accident in their haste to flee in the car. It turns out Riley and Trevor are hospitalized in the same room. Damn it! How did it come to this? It was supposed to be a perfect plan. If only the fire alarm hadn't gone off. In the end, we couldn't do anything with Lila and ended up getting seriously injured. What a mess. Damn it! As they openly wept and voiced their grievances, a nurse visiting their room informed them with displeasure. I had demanded compensation through a lawyer in the divorce proceedings, but both of them flatly refused to pay any settlement for the divorce. To demand compensation from me, her husband, in a divorce trial. Nothing actually happened, so it should be fine. That's right! In the end, all we did was give Lila sleeping pills and nothing else. Both their reasoning left me and my lawyer utterly dumbfounded. Even when told that administering sleeping pills without consent is unacceptable, they wouldn't listen at all. Moreover, "Hey, Lila, tell the police not to sue me and Dad. If the victim asks for a non-prosecution, the police won't sue, right?" They had the audacity to command. How low could they possibly be? I continued to ignore them, but they persistently demanded not to sue and to ask for a lighter sentence. However, their demands suddenly stopped at one point. After giving orders every day, it was strange for them to suddenly cease. Curious, I decided to investigate. It turns out they had encountered a serious problem. The owner of the mansion whose wall was destroyed when Riley and Trevor crashed into it was furious and had demanded they pay for the repairs. The damage was extensive, so the cost of repairs was significant. Moreover, my husband had lied, saying, "We were rushing to the hospital because Dad was suffering from an illness, and that led to the driving mistake." However, the incident was reported in the news. Upon learning the truth, the mansion owner became even more enraged and insisted on receiving both the repair costs and compensation from the divorce trial. As a result, Riley and Trevor seemed to have bigger problems than just dealing with me. "It wasn't on purpose. Please forgive us. We beg you." Riley and Trevor were pleading, but the mansion owner was unforgiving. They were told they must pay no matter what. Since the mansion owner hired a lawyer, Riley and Trevor also had to hire one to handle the situation. Since I had a lawyer as well, the compensation for the divorce was smoothly negotiated between the lawyers. Given their clear wrongdoing, our demands were almost fully met. I also demanded and received the money Riley had misappropriated from our joint savings account. Although I hadn't noticed his gambling addiction, I remembered how his overtime had suddenly increased at one point. Probably, he was lying about working late and going to pachinko instead. And so, I naturally proceeded with the divorce from Riley. The negotiations were handled by our lawyers, and though initially reluctant, Riley agreed to the divorce when I firmly insisted. Riley's lawyer played a significant role by convincing them that they were in a very unfavorable position and needed to show sincerity. Later, I went to thank our neighbor Luella again. "Thank you so much. I don't know how to express my gratitude." "Oh, I didn't do anything special. It's good that you're safe. Perhaps Emerson was looking out for you." "Emerson, you say? What do you mean?" After I was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, the firefighters came and checked the cause of the fire alarm. However, the only source of fire in the house was a candle on Emerson's altar, which no one should have lit. This wasn't enough to trigger the fire alarm, indicating a possible malfunction as there were no other signs of fire. "Maybe Emerson is always watching over you? She was so happy to have such a lovely daughter-in-law," Luella told me with a smile. It might have been a coincidence, but even so, I felt a warmth thinking about Emerson's kind smile. After expressing my thanks to Luella again, I headed to a certain cake shop. This shop sells a chocolate cake that I've always loved. When I had promised to have tea time with Emerson, I wanted her to try the chocolate from this cake shop. After buying sweet buns, I went to the florist to buy flowers that matched Emerson's cheerful image, with a fresh impression, and headed to visit her grave. Offering the flowers and chocolate at the grave, I expressed my gratitude to Emerson. "Dear Emerson, thank you so much. Your help saved me. Though I've divorced Riley, I will always love you, Mom. I wished I could have talked more with Emerson. I wanted to have that tea party. This chocolate was meant to be shared with you, Emerson, during our tea time. It's really delicious. Just then, the wind blew softly. Feeling as if Emerson had responded, a tear fell from my eye. But thinking that crying would worry Emerson, I lifted my face, smiled, and said, "I'll visit again, Emerson," and moved on. I decided to take the chocolate back with me later, as I couldn't leave it at the grave. On the way home, I felt incredibly refreshed. Despite everything, I vowed to live energetically from tomorrow on. Returning to single life, I threw myself into work more than ever before. Riley and Trevor, with their complex fractures, seem to still be in the hospital. The owner of the mansion is trying to collect the repair costs before they are discharged and sent to prison, and it seems they had to sell their car and belongings to pay back the money using their savings. Physically and mentally devastated, and with prison time awaiting them. They are experiencing a living hell. I hope they reflect deeply and pay for their crimes once they are discharged and sent to prison. Since then, I've been visiting Emerson's grave regularly, updating her on my life. Having had enough of love for a while, I've decided to enjoy being single and am studying hard to earn new qualifications. I plan to live every day without regrets. My husband called me disgusting for my severe morning sickness, looking down on me with cold eyes. "You're the one who threw up and made a mess, right? Hurry up and open the window to air it out. If the smell sticks, you're paying for it. Just because you find it hard to go shopping or cook doesn't mean morning sickness isn't an illness. Don't be so stupid." On top of that, as my morning sickness got worse, my husband left me at home and went on an overseas trip with mother-in-law, Audrina. That was the last straw for me, and I began to plot my revenge. A week later, my husband called, furious. I laughed it off. "Since you told me to clean the house, I did just as you said. Got a problem with that?" I'm Kimberly, a 28-year-old office worker. My husband, Eamon, and I live in a detached house and both work while we've recently become pregnant. While I was happy, my morning sickness was so severe that I couldn't go to work on some days. Fortunately, many at my workplace were understanding. "Once you get through this, it'll get easier, so make sure to rest and take care of yourself." They gave me some time off when I was considering quitting. So, I spent my days at home, resting as much as possible, eating when I could, and doing household chores. The problem was my husband. He practically stopped doing any housework at all. "You're always at home, right? Even a pregnant woman can clean, so at least do that." While my husband used to do household chores when we were both working, he stopped doing anything since I took my leave. Even when I said I couldn't do it because of severe nausea, he wouldn't listen. Moreover, he compared me to other pregnant women he had seen, saying, "Just being lazy and slacking off in the name of morning sickness." Furthermore, he was extremely averse to me vomiting. The first time I vomited at home, I didn't make it to the toilet and ended up using the living room trash can. Seeing this, my husband, pinching his nose, hurried me to ventilate the room and kept yelling at me, even though my nausea hadn't subsided. Although I vomited into a plastic bag in the trash can, so the can itself wasn't dirty, he made me dispose of the bag and then threw the trash can away. "Hey, what's with that attitude? Why are you telling me to open a window when I'm vomiting? You could open it yourself. And I properly sealed the double bag before throwing it away, so why throw out the trash can in front of me as if to make a point? Disgusting, smelly, don't talk." Even if it's in a plastic bag, droplets might have gotten on the trash can. After that, no matter what I said, "Don't talk because it's smelly," he wouldn't even listen. I started to consider divorce. Maybe once my morning sickness settled down and I could go back to work, my husband would return to being the kind and helpful person he used to be. But could a husband who hurled such abuse at me while I was suffering return to how he was? Or was this his true nature? As I worried, my morning sickness only got worse. With nausea hitting me multiple times a day, I started carrying a plastic bag with me everywhere in the house to vomit without my husband seeing and dispose of it. However, one time, I didn't manage to dispose of it in time, and he saw me with the bag. "Don't touch anything, all right? You're paying for the sofa you just sat on since you're going to dispose of it because you dirted it." He looked at me with utter disgust. When I impulsively brought up divorce, I noticed he was holding a pamphlet in his hand. He spread it out to show me. "In about 2 weeks, I'm going on a trip overseas with Mom. We plan to stay for about a week. Don't slack off on cleaning just because I'm not here. Keep the house clean." "What? What are you thinking?" While looking at me coldly, my husband laughed in a low voice. "I don't want to stay in a house you've made filthy. The morning sickness should settle down in about 3 weeks, right? By the time I'm back from the trip, it should be nearly over, so clean the house in the meantime." "Fine. I'll give the house a thorough cleaning." The next 2 weeks were tough for me. He doubled down on doing nothing, even eating strongly scented meals or spraying harsh perfume around the room despite my pleas because it made me nauseous. Despite locking me in the bathroom, he'd bang on the door furiously and yell if he wanted to use it himself. This lifestyle continued. I immediately informed my parents that I had decided on divorce. Since my husband's attitude changed, I had been discussing it with my parents, who must have realized from my words that convincing me otherwise was no longer possible. They told me to come back home immediately. However, just divorcing and returning to my parents' home wasn't enough for me. I was determined to teach my husband, who lacked any awareness of being a father and thought nothing of the individual differences in pregnancy and morning sickness, a lesson. 2 weeks later, I saw my husband off with a large carry-on bag. These 2 weeks were the peak of my morning sickness, and I had lost more than 2 kilos. If it continued like this, I would end up hospitalized due to severe pregnancy sickness. Seeing me visibly thinner, my husband still called me dirty and, after repeatedly ordering me to clean the house, fled like he was escaping. I stayed at the entrance until he was out of sight, then took a deep breath and made a phone call. A week later, I was leisurely sitting in my parents' living room when calls from my husband kept coming in. Calls from my husband kept coming in one after another. After watching for a while, my parents started to panic, so I reluctantly answered. "Don't mess with me. What the hell is this? Explain." I instinctively moved my smartphone away from my ear at the sound of my husband's loud voice the moment the call connected. Still, I sighed at the loud enough voice and listened to him. "I can't get into the house. What's going on? Don't change the locks on me while I'm away." "Ah, the real estate agent changed them. It's kind of gross to have the same keys as the previous tenant for the next one, right? So, they changed the locks when selling the house." "Huh? Real estate agent? Oh, didn't you see the sign? It's right there next to it, for sale." There was silence on the phone for a while before the angry voice came again. "What are you doing on your own? Who gave you permission to sell it? Why are you selling it? You said the whole house smells. So, I cleaned the entire house, including that. And why would I need anyone's permission to sell my house?" "Your house? That's not right. That house belongs to your grandfather. It's a crime to sell it without being the title holder." "That house was given to me, I remodeled it, and it's in my name. You can't just sell it if you're not the title holder." Indeed, the house we lived in belonged to my grandfather. However, after my grandfather passed away, I, still single, remodeled it into its current form, and after getting married, my husband moved in to live together. My husband was momentarily speechless knowing the title was in my name, but quickly changed his approach. "That house is where I live too. You can't just kick out a resident like that. It's illegal to sell my stuff." Besides, it was our house since we lived there as a couple, so it's not just your house anymore. Unfortunately, that house was in my name before we got married. We never changed it to a joint title after marriage. Plus, I moved all the stuff out after, so your things are all safe. I did dispose of the sofa you said was smelly, though. My husband seemed panicked by the mention of moving out his belongings. He was asking where and when. It's at your grandmother's house. After all, you're away with Dad gone and no siblings. There was nowhere else to send it but your grandmother's when you went overseas with Audrina. Hearing his belongings were at his kind grandmother's house seemed to calm my husband for a moment, but his voice quickly filled with anger again. So, you're the kind of woman who sells the house and dumps the belongings while her husband is on a trip. I'm divorcing you. I'll sue for compensation in the divorce court because of this. It's a relief you're the one bringing up divorce. I don't want you to come to the house anymore, and I'll be heading there with my lawyer soon. So, goodbye. I wonder if my husband truly believed he could win if he took it to court. I calmed my panicking parents while contacting a lawyer. A week later, when I went to what my husband calls his in-laws' house, Audrina slapped me before I even entered the door. I had expected it and deliberately received the slap. Because of you, the house is a mess. A woman who can't even do housework because of a little morning sickness is useless. Pay the compensation in the divorce court and let's divorce. As I was rubbing my stinging cheek, planning to retort to Audrina, she saw someone behind me and her face twisted. I thought you showed no remorse, but to strike immediately upon meeting is something else. Behind me was Carol, my husband's grandmother, looking furious. Hello. I'm really sorry for sending the belongings over so suddenly the other day. That's all right. If it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have noticed at all. I had come to the in-laws' house, which was now the home of my husband's grandmother who had kindly accepted his belongings. When I sent my husband's belongings, I included a letter of apology detailing everything about our situation. As a result, the grandmother was furious with her grandson's husband for hurling terrible words at his wife suffering from morning sickness and leaving her to fend for herself. She was equally furious at Audrina for going on an overseas trip with him without admonishing such behavior. The grandmother, now 80 years old, is a gentle figure to her grandson but a disagreeable mother-in-law to Audrina. Since Audrina married into the family, her relationship with the grandmother, due to their clashing personalities, has always been like cats and dogs. Sure enough, Audrina, upon suddenly facing the grandmother, twisted her face in obvious annoyance, which only fueled the grandmother's anger further. After briefly addressing the shouting match between the two, I entered the house. There, my husband stood, dumbfounded next to the grandmother and Audrina. It might have been shocking for my husband to see his kind grandmother and mother arguing so fiercely. However, wanting to discuss matters with my husband without Audrina's interference, I had informed the grandmother of my visit in advance. And we started the divorce negotiation with my lawyer before Audrina could return. The process didn't take much time and ended smoothly. The compensation amount my husband had prepared for the divorce court and its basis were systematically dismantled by my lawyer, leaving him speechless. After a thorough division of assets and agreeing not to approach me except when visiting our child after its birth, my husband readily agreed, and our marriage ended abruptly. As I was leaving the house, the grandmother and Audrina were still standing next to each other. I addressed them briefly before departing, but they seemed too heated in their argument to pay me any mind. Subsequently, I began receiving a barrage of complaint-like emails from my ex-husband. Apparently, he became annoyed with the grandmother coming to the in-laws' house and meddling. Imagining my former husband and Audrina, who had shouted at me so boldly, becoming meek in front of a petite grandmother, finally brought me to laughter. However, the nature of my ex-husband's emails soon shifted towards seeking reconciliation. Every day there's shouting. They both ask me what I think when they're fighting, dragging me into it, and it's annoying. It's a lifetime request. Please, let me stay at your place. I'll do household chores or anything. I won't do anything terrible again, and I'll never say it. I want to meet our coming child too. I love you. I want to remarry you. I responded mechanically. I will not reconcile. As for the child, you can meet if you pay child support. And left it at that. Eventually, the messages from my ex-husband ceased. Apparently, unable to bear the living conditions, he left Audrina and went somewhere. Not providing any support, Audrina, not yet of pensionable age, is scraping by on her savings. Audrina herself contacted me with this news. No one's helping me. Please, I want to stay at your place. I only went on the trip with my son because he invited me. I had no idea you were suffering so much from morning sickness. She claimed, lining up convenient excuses over the phone, but when I threatened to report her to the police, the calls stopped. Apparently, the grandmother also refused to help, and Audrina, limited by her savings, began working part-time. Thus, she no longer had the energy to call or email me. However, the altercation between the grandmother and Audrina that day is well known throughout the neighborhood, and they saw me deliberately receiving Audrina's slap. Consequently, the neighbors have distanced themselves from Audrina, leaving her to live uncomfortably in her home. Seemingly unable to afford renting a new apartment, she spends her days diminishing in stature. Yet, living alone in a rent-free house should be manageable on a part-time income. My morning sickness has finally subsided, and I no longer vomit. The doctor, learning of my divorce and the circumstances around it, scolded me for accumulating too much stress, which wouldn't help in healing. Though I had been consulting with my family, the stress from living with an uncooperative ex-husband for a while, and dealing with real estate agents online to sell the house, had been too much on my body, and I reflected on this. Moving forward, I plan to avoid stress and return to work. Anyway, I'll be taking maternity leave before giving birth, planning to live at my parents' house. Now, imagining the appearance of my unborn child brings me immense joy. As the days go by, my anticipation grows, and I can hardly wait to see what kind of child will be born. No matter what, I intend to raise my child with love. Risa, while you were away, I moved my parents' stuff into our house. What? What do you mean by that? While I was on a trip, my husband Polly had moved his parents' moving boxes into our house without asking. And on top of that, I received unbelievable treatment from Polly. You should not come back anymore. Polly doesn't want me to come back home anymore. Even though this house is where our family has always lived, Polly wants to kick me out and live with his parents. However, I had anticipated being kicked out by Polly and easily retorted, "Okay, I'll move out on my own." I sought advice from my dad, Mike, and took a certain action. First, I sent an email to someone and made a plan. I returned to America with Mike. And then, I came back to our house. I started to execute the plan as intended. Polly, who had been naively thinking he could live with his parents, was surprised by the unexpected turn of events. Actually, the plan I had made with Mike was, my name is Risa. I am a 45-year-old dietitian working in a hospital. Originally, I was supposed to follow in Mike's footsteps, but inheriting my mom's love for cooking, I became a dietitian. However, my beloved mom passed away before I graduated from college. After that, Mike started working in France, so we sold the house I was born and raised in, and I started living alone in an apartment. Being plain-looking since childhood, I've always been inconspicuous wherever I go. Moreover, attending girls' schools from middle school to university, I had no encounters with men, and I had never had a boyfriend. However, I was fortunate to meet good people wherever I went, and after graduating from college, I got married. At that friend's wedding, I met my current husband, Polly, who was 3 years older than me and a friend of the groom. He seemed like the type who would be popular with the ladies. Luckily, or perhaps coincidentally, he had just broken up with his girlfriend. His ex-girlfriend was a nurse, and it seems they broke up due to misaligned schedules and night shifts. When I mentioned that I was a dietitian with early mornings and few holidays, he was very pleased. However, at that time, I was busy studying for the national exam for registered dietitians, so I was busy on weekends. Even so, he was kind enough to send me messages, saying, "I miss not being able to see you, but good luck with your studies." Feeling a sense of destiny with him, I thought I'd like to marry him if I passed. And on the day of the exam results, he invited me out to celebrate my passing that night. "Congratulations on passing! This is how I feel, would you accept it?" What he handed me was an engagement ring. He proposed to me right then and there. Overjoyed as if my passing was his own, I tearfully said yes right away. And so, our married life began. At first, we thought about living in an apartment, but with Mike's help, we bought our own home. I was looking forward to a happy life from now on, but after getting married, I started to feel a sense of discomfort around Polly. Thinking it was because I had no experience with men, I assumed it would be okay once I got used to it. However, one day, when Polly was looking at my pay stub, he made a comment that made me do a double take. "What's this?" I thought dietitians, being professionals, would earn more. I'm disappointed. What? Well, I just started working, and we're both working, so an income of around $200,000 should be fine, right? I retorted, feeling somewhat offended. It's not like I got married to be supported by my husband, but being told my salary was low didn't feel good. Yet, Polly went on to insult my earnings further. I've been totally deceived. If I knew the income was this low, I would have asked before getting married. A nurse would have earned more. Polly must have been talking about his ex-girlfriend. It's one thing to complain about my earnings, but comparing me to his ex-girlfriend is unforgivable. Indeed, nurses receive night shift allowances and holiday pay. In comparison, my salary is lower because I have fewer early mornings and holiday shifts. However, I have my own side of the story to tell. I happened to see Polly's pay stub the other day, and it turns out he earns even less than I do. Yet, I thought we wouldn't struggle with our combined incomes, so I didn't say anything. I tried to gently break it to Polly, not wanting to hurt his pride. "Well, it seems like you have it tough too, so I guess you were hoping for a bit more from my salary. Sorry for not meeting your expectations." That's right. I work for a small company, and my salary is really low, so I wanted to marry a professional woman to achieve financial stability. I only meant to cheer him up with what I didn't even believe myself, but I never thought Polly would take it seriously. Before we got married, he was happy that my work hours were regular, but after we got married, he complained about my low income as if he had changed his stance. What kind of world does a man live in where he expects his wife's income to be higher than his? I was just dumbfounded by Polly's unreliable behavior. As soon as he knew about my income, Polly started looking down on me. Yet, he wouldn't hesitate to buy whatever he wanted without restraint. Even when I asked him to be a bit more frugal, he wouldn't listen at all. "I've been spoiled by my parents since I was a kid, buying me whatever I wanted, so I can't change my attitude towards money that easily." I couldn't say anything back to such a spoiled statement from Polly. It's no excuse to say that he was spoiled by his parents when he was a child at his age. The following year after we got married, we were blessed with a boy. I hoped that becoming a parent would change Polly, but his habit of spending recklessly didn't improve, even during childcare. It was always the same with him, spending his entire salary. If it wasn't enough, he'd sneak money from my wallet without me noticing. While I was struggling to manage work and budgeting while raising our son, Cedric, Polly hardly contributed to childcare. As time passed, struggling through these tough days, Cedric is now preparing for his college entrance exams this year. Thanks to my careful budgeting, it looks like we can afford to send him to college. Cedric, understanding our financial situation, has been studying hard to enter a national university. Yet, Polly came up with a ridiculous idea. Because I bought a new car last year, the loan repayments are tough. Plus, there's Cedric's exams, right? So, I've decided to sell my parents' house and have them move in with us.
Wait, what are you saying? Suddenly living together like that, it's going to be a problem.
Why? Risa, you get along with my parents, right? If we live together, we'll get their pension and become wealthier. Indeed, I don't hate the idea of living with my in-laws. It's just that I didn't like Polly's way of making decisions on his own. In terms of finances, we've been managing well so far, so there shouldn't be a problem as long as we don't indulge in luxuries.
Why do you always decide everything selfishly? Even the new car, you bought it without consulting me.
That's my car, so I don't need to consult you every time. Seeing Polly's selfish behavior, this time, Cedric got furious.
Dad, enough is enough. When I go to college, I might come home late from part-time jobs or clubs. If grandparents Arnold and Rothy are living with us, it's going to be awkward, right? Why don't you discuss these things properly with Mom?
Cedric, coming out of his room all of a sudden and raising his voice, left Polly wide-eyed in surprise. But the next moment, Polly turned to me, lashing out as if he was taking it out on me.
Cedric talking back to me, his dad, like that is because of your poor parenting. Reflect on it.
Saying that, Polly locked himself in his room and didn't come out for a while. I was happy that Cedric stood up for me. However, I was worried that the current home environment would affect his exam preparations. Despite my worries, Cedric successfully passed his first-choice national university. But tired of living with Polly, Cedric decided to move out and start living on his own. He said he wants to try his best on his own without relying on his parents, even if it means working part-time. Even so, Polly continues to ignore both me and Cedric. Ever since it's been just Polly and me at home, we don't even talk though we're in the same house. It feels suffocating. During these days, feeling mentally drained, I called my dad Mike in France to seek advice. Mike, worried about me, suggested I come to France for a while. I thought I couldn't take a long break because of my job, but it seems my colleagues were worried about my pale complexion recently. After explaining the situation, I was allowed to take some time off. However, I wanted to keep my consultation with Mike a secret from Polly. So, I told him I was invited on a trip by a friend. I hoped that if I was away for a while, Polly might cool down a bit. But heading to Mike's, an entirely unexpected situation unfolded. Starting with a call from Polly while I was in France. Risa, I've moved my parents' stuff into our house while you were away.
What? What do you mean?
What do you mean, what? I've been saying, haven't I? That I'd live with my parents. More than that, Dad and Mom are angry with you. They said a wife who spoils their son like you is the worst. No way. I couldn't believe what Polly was saying. My in-laws shouldn't be the type to speak ill of me like that. So, I've decided we'll live with my parents and me from now on. If you were here, it'd inconvenience my parents. After all, you're the strict wife who makes their son speak ill of them. Polly must have badmouthed me to my in-laws. Maybe the part about them being angry with me was also a fabrication. Angry, I thought about shouting something back. But, to stay calm, I just said, "I'll call you back later," and hung up. Luckily, Mike was home, so I immediately shared the phone call's content with him. Mike, looking disgruntled, shook his head. "Polly, really? Relying on his parents at his age?" "That's what I'm saying. I don't understand why I have to be the one kicked out." After a long discussion, Mike came up with a suggestion that excited me. I thought this would teach Polly a lesson. First, I contacted someone by email, then called Polly's mobile phone. "Polly, talking over the phone won't cut it, so let's discuss this when I get back from my trip." I said this calmly, but Polly, with a laugh in his voice, replied, "You shouldn't come back." Just as Mike advised, Polly didn't want me to return home. Expecting this, I retorted easily, "Okay, got it. I'll just move out on my own." "Huh?" Polly sounded taken aback by my unexpected response. But thinking I was just bluffing, he laughed and replied, "Move out? Where to, when you have nowhere to go?" "Oh, to the place I'm currently at." "What are you talking about? You're on a trip with friends. Wait, you're not with a man, are you?" Now he seemed to misunderstand that I was with a lover, so I decided to reveal the truth. "Well, if it's a man, it's indeed a man. But, it's Dad." Mike's place." Polly sounded relieved. But he'd be surprised by the next part of the conversation. "Dad's living in a mansion in France now, so I've decided to live here too. That's why we're going to sell the house we've been living in." "What? What do you mean?" "Well, you should know, right? That house is in Dad's name, built for us. If I'm not living there, it's to be sold." "What? But Dad and Mom are here right now. What are you going to do?" "That's what I said. It's no use talking over the phone." Polly, finally grasping the situation, hung up without saying anything else. He can't possibly imagine the further tragedy waiting for him upon my return to America. A week later, I returned home with Mike, where Polly was living with my in-laws. At the entrance, my in-laws greeted us with smiles. "Mike, it's been a long time." "Yes, I can't often return to America due to work. Risa has always been under your care." While Mike and my father-in-law Arnold were exchanging greetings, Polly quietly emerged. It seemed he hadn't yet informed them about the house sale. Looking awkward, Polly just bowed his head. "Polly, the movers are coming today to pick up the stuff. Have you prepared everything?" "All your stuff is already packed." "Oh, it's not just my things that are being moved out." "Huh? Do I have to move my things out today, too?" Polly's surprised shout caught Arnold's attention. "What's going on, Polly? Why are your things being moved out?" Polly, looking guilty, hesitantly explained the situation. Arnold became furious and started yelling at Polly. "You said this house was bought under your name with a loan so we could live together. Making your parents ashamed, unforgivable." Arnold's thunderous voice left Polly speechless. Then, the moving truck arrived. After my things were moved out, my mother-in-law Rothy came out to direct the movers. "Thank you for your hard work. Our stuff is prepared here, please take it." Rothy had neatly prepared all the household items, including Polly's. Seeing this, Polly was dumbfounded. "Mom? What's happening? Why are you packing Dad's stuff too? Where are you planning to take it?" Watching Polly panic and question Rothy, we all burst into laughter. "You've been completely fooled." "What? What's going on? Why is everyone laughing all of a sudden?" Indeed, this was all a plan to trick Polly, discussed in advance by everyone here. The first person I contacted by email from France was Rothy. Rothy had been worried about my tired appearance for some time. After repeatedly asking why, I ended up telling Rothy everything about Polly. Rothy was shocked, especially at the part where Polly blamed his extravagant habits on his parents spoiling him. Rothy tearfully apologized for her parenting in front of me, which made me feel guilty. But Polly's wasteful spending wasn't Rothy's fault. As I comforted Rothy, our bond deepened. For me, without a mom, Rothy became someone I could consult about anything. Mike was aware of my close relationship with Rothy. Thus, he suggested involving the in-laws in our plan. Rothy, without letting Polly know, had been looking for a new place for them to live with Arnold. Arnold's scolding of Polly was all an act. I nearly burst out laughing at their convincing performance.
Rothy, thank you for arranging the movers for me as well. Now, I can move to the house Dad built in France.
I'm sorry, Risa.
My son has caused you so much trouble.
Rothy, we agreed not to say that, didn't we? Rothy and I laughed together. Polly, unaware of how close I was with his parents, looked surprised. Mom, where are we moving to?
We've already sold our family home.
We've already arranged a new place for us. Polly seemed relieved at Rothy's words. But that relief would soon be short-lived.
So, it was like that. I worried for nothing. Then I'll just go there too, right?
What are you talking about?
That's a senior living apartment for Arnold to live in with someone else. Polly, you're not a child anymore. Find your own place to live.
As soon as Rothy said this, Polly's face turned pale.
That's impossible. I don't even have the money for moving, let alone find a new place.
Indeed, Polly had squandered his salary on hobbies and entertainment, leaving him with no savings. No matter how he struggled now, it was his own responsibility. Desperate, Polly looked at me with pleading eyes. I could guess what he was about to say.
By the way, Mike built quite a big house in France, right? I had no idea you were such a well-off lady. Listen, I'll do anything you say from now on, so could you take me with you to that house?
Suddenly speaking in a sweet tone, he was indeed trying to rely on me. I had no intention of indulging such naive thoughts and firmly stated my position.
I've been fooled by your kind words on occasion, but I can't forgive you anymore. You've barely contributed to our living expenses and have just been playing around. I don't want to be your wife anymore. I've already discussed this with Cedric on the phone yesterday, and we've decided to get a divorce. Cedric agrees it's for the best.
I vented the feelings I had been holding back, feeling a sense of relief. My in-laws seemed to agree, nodding deeply.
What am I supposed to do now?
Polly cried, tears in his eyes, but my decision was firm. I presented him with the divorce papers and demanded his signature. Yet, Polly stubbornly refused to sign. Seeing this, Arnold showed his anger again.
Polly, enough is enough. After all the trouble you've caused Risa, now you're thinking of relying on her parents' home. I'm ashamed to call you my son.
That's right.
I admit, I've spoiled you too much. But Polly, you're an adult now. Stop being so selfish and start living on your own.
Convinced by his parents' earnest persuasion, Polly shed tears.
What? Even Dad and Mom? Do I have no allies here?
Muttering so, Polly signed the divorce papers. He then arranged to store his belongings in a storage unit and left the house alone. Betrayed by the parents he thought were on his side, he was visibly shocked. However, the in-laws had decided to cut ties with Polly. Not just them. I also promised never to let Polly see Cedric again. This was a strong request from Cedric. He had always resented Polly for never acting like a father. With the divorce as an opportunity, Cedric wanted to sever ties with Polly. I thought it was for the best for Cedric. Rejected by his parents and disowned by his son, Polly must have lost the will to live. Having lost everything, Polly spent some time living in monthly rental hotels and internet cafes. But once he received his salary, he managed to move into an apartment where he could live alone. During the divorce, I gave Polly a small amount of money as part of our shared assets. It was practically nothing, but I wanted to avoid any future claims for money, given my financial situation. In essence, it was severance pay. However, once Polly had a bit of financial leeway, he started getting into partying. Why do I know this? Because Polly contacted me, saying,
"I'll find a woman with a good income and make you regret leaving me."
Initially, after becoming alone, Polly would contact me just to express his loneliness. But once he had money, his attitude became arrogant again. After some time, the communications from Polly suddenly stopped. I wondered if he had found a new girlfriend, but it turned out the situation was far more serious. According to the former in-laws, Polly had fallen for a nurse he met at a party. Despite not being reciprocated, Polly persistently pursued her. At worst, he even showed up at her apartment. As a result of his relentless stalking, he was reported and arrested in the act. The former in-laws, having intended to sever parental ties, were troubled by their son's scandal, feeling deeply sorry for them. Being a parent is tough. No matter how much you try to distance yourself, you're still responsible when something happens. Despite causing so much trouble for his parents, Polly seemed unrepentant. During the interrogation,
"It was true love,"
he kept insisting. This led to a judgment that he was not remorseful, and his release was delayed. Such a man is better off cooling his head in prison for a while. After all, a penniless man in his 50s chasing such ideals will only cause annoyance. Now, I live elegantly in a mansion in France with Mike. Still not accustomed to the environment and not fluent in French, I'm not working yet. However, I can't stay unemployed forever, so I'm attending French lessons. Once I'm proficient in the language, I plan to help out with Mike's company. As time passed, Cedric graduated from university. He then moved here to work at Mike's company. In fact, Mike had called him over with the intention of making Cedric his successor. It was lonely being apart from Cedric for 4 years, but now we can live together forever. This thought fills me with joy. Now that I've become quite fluent in French, I assist with Mike's company and work as a cooking class instructor locally. Though my marriage failed, my life in France is very fulfilling. Despite being in my mid-40s, this is an ideal environment to enjoy life. I've decided to forget my past self, who worried about being plain and unpopular, and live positively. After all, there's still so much more to come. Surely, Mom in heaven is watching over me.
Mom and Dad are taking me overseas. This is just going to be luggage, so I'll leave this behind with you. It might be hard for you, but it's a good way to kill time, right?
Kristen said with a smirk, implying her superiority to Sophia. Kelly, who married into an elite family, always boasted about her daughter Kristen. On the other hand, my family, with Sophia the same age as Kristen, come from a normal family. Influenced by Kelly, Kristen grew up flaunting her financial comfort and academic excellence, always emphasizing how different she was from Sophia. For Sophia too, this summer vacation is crucial, as she's preparing for college entrance exams. Kristen, caught up in her own excitement, left a pile of school assignments at our house and went off to her overseas trip. However, Sophia, the recipient of Kristen's spite, decides to take action. My name is Mary. I'm a working mother in a regular household, with my daughter Sophia facing exams this year. Every morning, I make breakfast, wake up Sophia and my husband Harold, hand them their lunches, and we all head out. Life was supposed to continue like this, day after day. But it quickly changed. Now, my life is filled with struggles. It's because of my sister-in-law Kelly, married to Adam, who works in a globally expanding company. Kelly, who married a rich, and her daughter Kristen, have become a source of stress. Sophia and Kristen, being the same age, were inseparable like twins during their childhood. Living not far from each other's homes, family gatherings, especially during long vacations, meant they were always together. But as Kristen started attending various classes and tutoring, their playtime significantly reduced. Gradually, we lost touch with Kelly's family, and by the time we met again, Kristen, maintaining top grades at a prestigious private school, had become Kelly's pride. In Adam's absence due to frequent business trips, Kelly enjoyed her life as an elegant housewife. With Kristen, nearly guaranteed a scholarship through school recommendations due to her grades, you could say their whole family was sailing smoothly. However, for Kelly and Kristen, with too much time on their hands, our family, working parents, and Sophia studying hard for general exams, became an easy target for mockery. When did Kelly's assertive personality twist into something unpleasant? Her straightforward and cool attitude was lost, replaced with sending us unpleasant, boastful messages. It wouldn't matter if I was the only target. But on weekends, they started visiting, ostensibly to play with us. Bringing expensive confectionery as a pretext, clearly to disturb us, especially Sophia.
We bought this cake, so let's have tea. Sophia should come and join us. Kristen, go call her,
Kelly said, summoning Sophia without my permission. Of course, Sophia was studying. Soon, Sophia came down to the living room, looking displeased. Kristen, with a somewhat mean smile, nudges her.
People taking general exams have to cram a lot, right?
Must be tough.
But since your cousin's here to play, you should entertain her.
Well, you don't need to study, but I. Unlike the provocative Kristen, Sophia is shy and can't stand up for herself. All I can do is try to end the tea party quickly. I swiftly prepared the tea and hastened them to finish the cake. Meanwhile, Kelly keeps bragging about how brilliant Kristen is and how hard she works at her extracurriculars.
Isn't it odd? You're a mother and you hardly ever boast about Sophia.
Kelly suddenly said so out of nowhere. But the reason I don't retort with boastful stories is that Sophia has asked me not to. Sophia possesses many virtues that neither I nor Harold have. I always want to counter. But Sophia seems to think there's no need to let Kelly and the rest know. I tolerate and respect Sophia's wishes, responding nonchalantly.
Mom always bragged more about you than me, right?
It's the same thing. Kelly, looking satisfied, laughed it off.
Yeah, that's right.
This way everything ends as if nothing happened. Yes, our parents also favored Kelly over me, always showing more enthusiasm and expectation for her. They sided with Kelly, who married the elite Adam, all the time. I could tolerate that, but what really got to me was how they constantly compared the grandchildren, always praising Kristen. I was utterly fed up with our parents' attitude. Despite feeling a strong irritation inside, I had to endure it for Sophia's sake, day after day. Then, the children's summer vacation arrived. But with it came turmoil. Kelly's family was preparing for a month-long trip abroad. Since they seemed to be unconcerned with academic studies, we had been hearing about their proud travel plans every week. We thought about taking a trip ourselves, but Sophia was determined.
Without Kristen around, I'll be able to study in peace.
So, we dropped our plans. However, just before their departure, Kelly's family showed up at our house with a pile of assignments.
Kelly, what is all this?
Summer homework, of course. I faced them, feeling a mix of surprise and bewilderment. The massive amount of assignments, covering our table, was obviously from Kristen's school.
We're leaving soon, right? These would just be extra luggage, and Kristen doesn't have time for such tedious stuff, so we thought we'd leave it to Sophia. Yeah, it might be a bit tough for you, but give it your best shot.
Sophia and I were both stunned. Kelly and her family wore smug smiles. They didn't even try to hide their condescending looks. But did they realize how absurd their words were? I have my own assignments, and summer courses too. For a student facing exams, there's no time to waste on trivial things. Sophia's dream school is highly competitive. She couldn't possibly spare time for Kristen's work on top of her own studies and summer courses. Sophia tried to speak up, but Kelly cut her off. It's Sophia's last summer in high school too, so I originally said no to this plan, you know. But you guys aren't going anywhere, right? Unlike our Adam, traveling must be hard for you guys. Kristen joined in with a spiteful look at Sophia. My school's on high level, so I'm not sure if Sophia can handle it, but it's a good study opportunity, right? After their carefree remarks, they left the blank assignments and departed for their trip. Adam probably didn't know about this. He's been away for work, leaving before the summer break. Without the fair and serious Adam around, they brazenly dumped this on us. I tried talking to our parents about Kelly's outrageous behavior, but they still sided with her, making me furious. You need to study anyways, so just do it. Kristen is giving you this chance, which makes her the better child. Sophia's not trying hard enough. Instead of complaining, why doesn't she just study quietly? My mom said so selfishly. With Dad always agreeing with her, I realized I couldn't expect anything from our parents. Dejected, I gave up on consulting them. Sophia not getting a recommendation was largely due to her reserved nature. Those selected for recommendation slots were active in student council, clubs, and had outstanding grades. Sophia, being shy, always found it challenging. But she was distressed enough to say she could study more in the absence of Kelly's family. I was filled with seething anger. Sophia too was furious. But, unlike my vehement refusal, she reacted differently. To my surprise, she started tackling Kristen's assignments alongside her own studies. I won't lose. If I can't beat Kristen, I can't beat the exams. Mom, I'll show them I can do it. That way of thinking never even crossed my mind, but Sophia was determined. I'll create work that will shut them up. She was breathing heavily. If Kelly and Kristen returned to find the assignments untouched, they would be troubled. But my concern was how much more they would interfere with Sophia after that. Kelly and her family were looking down on us, thinking, she can't possibly do it. Well, then, we just had to surpass their expectations. Next time we're asked for something, we can just say, we're going to refuse, since we already completed that massive load of summer homework. Impressed by Sophia's positive attitude, I changed my mindset. No longer just enduring, but ready to fight back boldly, that was the only way to win against Kelly and her family. I confessed everything to Harold and persuaded him to join us as a family in tackling the tasks. Sophia and I were more than ready, but Harold, preferring to think it over, called it a day. However, within 2 days, Harold came up with a summer vacation schedule to get through the assignments. He planned not only the homework but also divided household chores among the 3 of us, set days to check progress, and even ensured Sophia had time for her own studies. He thought of everything, including breaks from the study-heavy routine. We were amazed at the precision of his hastily made plan. Dad, you're actually amazing? Sophia asked innocently. Harold, with a bashful smile, replied, It's what I do every day at work. Though he seemed modest, he was the best leader for Sophia and I. As a result of our family's united effort, we finished the assignments perfectly and ahead of schedule. Sophia was able to focus on her studies, and her mock exam scores improved significantly. I was relieved to see her gaining confidence. Harold, in a great mood, picked up one particular assignment for a final check. This French essay is outstanding. With this, you and I could go back to college. The truth is, Harold and I couldn't pursue doctoral studies due to financial reasons. Working on this reminded us of the French literature seminar room where we first met. That was how hard we were tackling the assignments. Studying and researching really was fascinating. So fascinating that it made me worry that Kristen, who considers such things as troublesome, might miss out on this joy. Right before summer vacation ended, Kelly's family returned. They collected the assignments without much inspection, seemingly satisfied that they were just done. Their own stories seemed far more important to them. Then, a few days into the new term, an unusually cheerful Kelly and her family visited. Apparently, some of the assignments were exceptionally good, earning praise from teachers. Kelly and Kristen were proud, despite having no part in the work.
And the French essay. Next week, it will be presented as an outstanding piece in front of everyone. Which reminds me, didn't you and Harold major in French literature or something? Seems like it didn't lead to great job prospects. Anyways, since it's Kristen's assignment, she'll be the one receiving the accolades. Kelly probably enjoyed thinking we were desperately working on just a child's homework. Kristen could hardly contain her mocking laughter, delighted with the bonus recognition. Later, Kelly sent us a photo of Kristen holding the award certificate, but I just replied, "Congratulations," and deleted the picture. However, trouble arose the following month. In the middle of the night, an enraged Kelly barged into our house. Kristen crying beside her. Hey Mary! Write that French thing again. You did it once, so you can do it.
What? At this ungodly hour? You're asking for French. As I tried to calm down the frantic Kelly at the front door, Harold and Sophia woke up. The French essay from the summer vacation, which earned Kristen the recognition, was selected for a presentation at the cultural festival. She accepted, thinking it was just a reading, but then was told to submit a new essay for another competition. Kristen struggles with French, even simple compositions are hard for her. So she thought, I'll just have Sophia write it again. And imposed a deadline on Sophia without her consent. But Sophia ignored the new French essay request. The unity during summer vacation had grown into a big confidence boost for her, strengthening her trust in the family. Today, just before the festival, Sophia finally responded to Kristen, who was angrily pressing for the deadline. I didn't write the summer vacation essay, so I don't know. Why don't you ask Mom and the others? Kristen, always hiding behind Kelly, was essentially a timid and mean-spirited girl. She couldn't say anything directly to us. Sophia was unusually cold to her, and in a panic, she thought of consulting Kelly, but unfortunately, she was out at a mom friend's party and didn't get home until very late at night. When Kelly got home, Kristen was waiting and crying, confessing about the essay. Kelly, who had no intention of going to the cultural festival, calling it child's play, was therefore uninformed and shocked. Without caring that it was midnight, she rushed over to our house in a panic. So, it's about that French essay. Make a new one, please. Poor Kristen, she's been deceived by Sophia. It seemed that was the situation. Honestly, I was surprised at Kelly's audacity to leave such a big problem entirely up to us. Sophia, watching Kelly and the others screaming at the front door, remained cool and unimpressed. Anyway, we no longer had a reason to write a new essay. I recommended admitting honestly that she couldn't write.
I can't let her do something so pathetic,
Kelly retorted. But our family firmly continued to refuse. We've done our duty with the summer assignments. We won't do anything more. Enough is enough, or we'll call the police, or Adam, before that. With Harold's words, Kelly suddenly fell silent and took Kristen home with her. A few hours later, our home phone rang. It was our displeased mom back home. Apparently, Kelly had gone crying to her parents right after.
You should write Kristen's essay, Mom said.
But maybe because she was woken up at an unreasonable hour, Mom was complaining differently than usual, not taking Kelly's side.
Seriously, both Kelly and Kristen are the worst. Kelly is always angry, and Kristen is always just tagging along. Calling in the middle of the night without even considering the inconvenience of others.
The phone call continued with complaints about Kelly. Mom might be a victim in her own way, but she just seemed to be looking down on Kelly. I quickly refused to help with the essay. We no longer wanted to be involved with them. Later, they somehow managed to finish the French essay using a translation app. Naturally, the quality was miles apart from the summer assignment. The teachers were in an uproar over the poor quality. There were even suggestions that the award-winning assignment might have been plagiarized, and Kristen was questioned.
That essay you submitted for the festival, I've never seen such poor quality. We've discussed it with other teachers, and we think we need to verify if you really wrote your summer vacation essay yourself. I did it, teacher. I really did. I didn't plagiarize, I swear. If that's true, there's no way your essay would be this poorly written. The simple grammar and spelling mistakes are glaring. It's as if it was hastily written in a panic to meet the deadline. For a high school student, anyway, you'll have to explain properly.
After being repeatedly questioned by the teacher without her mother's protection, Kristen finally confessed to having someone else do all her assignments. As a result, her grades were reassessed. The presentation at the cultural festival was, of course, cancelled, and she was given a suspension, with more assignments than those from the summer vacation. Her internal grades were significantly reduced. The details of the assignment commission were also recorded in her report, and it seemed the incident was over. But that was not the end. Following the severe reprimand she received, classmates started confessing problems with her school life. Turns out, Kristen had been targeting poor or timid kids, throwing money at them to forcefully do her assignments. It was revealed that those who couldn't resist because of poverty or those humiliated and laughed at when called out by Kristen's group brought the issue to light. The school tried to settle the matter quietly. To clarify the situation, Kristen underwent several interviews and investigations. This was no mere issue for a report card. The incident led to the cancellation of Kristen's designated school recommendation. Since the second-ranking student took her place, Kristen was forced to take general entrance exams, but she had long lost any time to study at school. The season quickly turned to exam season, and, as a result of her lack of study, she failed everything. On the other hand, since Kelly and her family hardly visited our house after the cultural festival, Sophia, who had diligently studied, got into a university. Her efforts paid off, and she got into the national university she wanted. Our house was wrapped in a celebratory mood, and I made a lavish dinner to celebrate. Kelly, without changing her heart, forced Kristen into a gap year, fearing they would be seen as a family that couldn't send their daughter to college. Kristen, maybe due to her pride, started studying at home but made no progress. The atmosphere in Kelly's house grew worse by the day, with constant parent-child fights, but all they blamed was us. Adam finally became suspicious of Kristen's attitude, which seemed to target Sophia excessively. He was completely unaware of the incident Kristen had caused at school. But once it was revealed, Adam was deeply shocked. I can't believe it.
Kristen has grown into a person who looks down on others, flaunting her wealth and just taking what's good.
Kelly had baseless absolute confidence in her parenting. Adam trusted her, but it was Kristen who had caused an incident involving the school and several classmates. Desperate, he tried to convince them to at least apologize to our family, but their pride got in the way, and they refused. They wouldn't bow their heads, and instead, kept trying to put the blame on us. Adam, hearing bad things about us every day, came to despise his wife and child from the bottom of his heart and eventually decided to divorce. Kelly and Kristen, kicked out of their luxurious house, decided to return to their parents' home. Kelly thought they would be welcomed since they brought cute Kristen, but things didn't go as she planned. Our parents, who always supported her, started treating Kristen almost like a jinx because of the multiple problems she caused. And their attitude changed drastically. They had always been harsh on Sophia but now turned to her with kind voices, desperately trying to please her. They even tried to send her expensive gifts. This confused both me and Sophia.
For your successful admission, how about we buy you a luxury brand bag? You've worked so hard, you deserve all the luxury. Yeah, unlike Kristen, it's okay if it's a bit expensive, tell your grandpa what you want.
Their parents praised Sophia and disparaged Kristen. Sophia had long lost her affection for her grandparents and wouldn't be appeased with a brand bag. Neither me nor Sophia wanted to get back at Kelly and her family for what they had done. We didn't want to look down on them, so we refused the gift even if it was for celebration. Why were our parents trying to please us? It seemed to be related to Kelly and her family coming back.
Kelly's back, right? We want you to help her. For the family. You know, we're getting old, and there are household chores.
My mother hesitated on purpose. They couldn't handle Kelly and her family, so they were calling us to take care of them. But we had long lost any desire to see Kelly and her family's faces. Not just me, but my whole family refused and didn't step into my parents' house. Moreover, we had no intention of visiting them anymore. To my parents, who were desperately trying to please us at our front door, Sophia smiled back and said,
"We're moving. We're not coming back to this town, so take care of Kristen and her family. I have university, so please don't bother us anymore. Goodbye." What?
Our parents could only stand there with mouths agape. Yes, we had decided to move altogether after that summer vacation, regardless of the exam results. And so, we cut ties with my parents and Kelly's family and headed to a new town. The ones left behind are reportedly fighting every day at my parents' house. Since the divorce with Adam was finalized, their living standards plummeted, and Kelly, with no face to show to her mom friends, became increasingly reclusive. Without jobs, the mother and the daughter blamed each other in a nasty fight, causing uproar with my parents almost every day. As for us, we are expanding our social circle smoothly at the new place. Sophia studies seriously at the university, immersing herself in seminar research. She has made new friends in addition to her high school ones and looks happy going to the university every day. It was a year of mostly studying, but now Sophia has grown enough to balance both study and play. I hope she goes out more from now on. Although the moving expenses were a bit of a burden, we have enough savings for her to choose her favorite path. The unreasonable task of the summer vacation assignment was an absurd incident, but someday we'll be able to laugh about it, saying, "Remember when that happened?" By then, we'll remember not the malicious faces of Kelly and her family, but the unity and effort of our own family.